Now we came to the topic of theories in economics. Theories can be used to explain something and make the predictions. For example, the theory of indifference curve and budget lines can be used to explain the behavior of the consumer. The value of this theory is how reliable they are when we try to apply in the real predicting the behavior of the consumer in the is daily basis or in the making of his decisions in the everyday life. So the consumer won't directly apply the theory, but uses the rationality. But the use of theory is for the economists. The work of the applying the theory is done by the economist. The point is to be noted. So the consumer won't think about the theory, but he takes his decision based on his rationality, and the rationality word is given by the economist, is not by the consumer. So the word rationality is given by the economist. So the consumer makes his decision by his rationality or his utility which he goes to take. So the circumstances or the theory has its own limitations, and none theory could become the very perfectly designed for the purpose of the implementation, or that could fit perfectly to the behavior of the consumer. So just the theory of indifference curve was an example to the consumer behavior. The overall theory has its own limitations and could not be fitted to the every circumstance in a very full way. So that the neoclassicals argue that in the 19th century, in the period of the neoclassical, there was the not linkage between the economics and the society in that way, so that they can't predict more about the theories. So the neoclassical of this theory could become that there was no such linkage while comparing to the present scenario. So they argue that theory is the important, but the present scenario of the understanding of the theories has become the very different. When we understand in the present scenario, we look out into the back of them, or the back into that scenario, that there was no such linkage, or these predictions were not such very clarity. But in the present time, we can understand in a very clear circumstances, and how this can be applied in a very clear and very powerful way that will leads towards the understanding to that. So the conclusion could be drawn that none theory could become the very perfect, or that is designed to the perfectly implement in a particular scenario on the economic. So economists think about that to deal, or to predict, or to understand the consumer behavior and the most level, so that his decision can be drawn in a very clear form. So the overall possibility of understanding the consumer behavior through the theory is that the none part of the consumer is none part of the consumer is be is been out of the theory. So the possibility of the theories is that to the possible decisions or the possible rationality of the consumer should be covered in a theory. So the conclusion can be drawn on a very vast level. So overall, the theory has its own limitations, and the theories are being very updated since the time. So, on the basic level, let's understand the what the theory consists of. In a very hot summer, a fruit juice of the mango is sold in a market, and the juice of the mango is very common in the summers. And when the seller sells the glass of juice of the mango at the 20 rupees, at that point of time, there is a less consumers of the mango juice. So, by his possibility, without knowing the theory, he just decreases the 5 rupees of the mango juice. At that point, the consumer begins to increase and the sale of the juice will go to the point. So that he come to the conclusion that when the prices are low, so at that point of time there will be a high sales of the juice. And one day he tries to still decrease the price, and on that day there were no sales of the juice, so that he become the afraid of that, and he tries to understand or come to the conclusion why, since he was decreasing the price of the juice, but today there is no sales of his juice. So on that day he come to the conclusion that the if he decrease or increase the price, there is some consumers who consume on the any circumstance. If he decreases the price, still they consume, or he increase the price, still they consume. So on the broader level, there is a one point on which this general consumer will consume. So the conclusion he drawn that the consumer which are the regular or they interested they consume. So the theories has the very important with the including the overall or understanding the human behavior, that will conclude towards the very predictable understanding of the human behavior. So theories has the very important aspects in the economics that will conclude towards the understanding of the human behavior in a particular scenarios.